Yes, a very good evening, great educators from wherever you're joining us to this for today's training. My name is Maxwell. I'll be your facilitator today. As Vida and Kiko have communicated earlier, I'll be taking you through quickly through an onboarding session, or what I can call a review of the first three modules. Remember, there are guys who joined us for maybe the second module, they didn't make it for the first module, or some who joined in the third module. So we thought it's a great way to bring everybody on board so that going forward, we'll be moving together as a unit. And this is also just as a breather or a break for us so that we can reflect on the three modules that we have gone through. That is lesson planning, lesson design, and assessment. So I'll be quick on some key areas that I think were necessary for us to have a look at them. And so in case you have any issue arising from any of these slides, let me know through the chat section. My moderators will be able to signal me so that I can respond to some of your questions. So welcome once again for this review or recap. As I share my screen, so that we can start on this. So I'm hoping that my screen is visible to all of you. Probably Kiko could confirm that, or Vida.
Yes, it's viewable, Teacher Maxwell, and I would kindly request you to disable the annotation from your end.
Okay, let me just do that right away. Okay, that's done. So how is my audibility on that end? Am I clear enough?
Yes, we can hear you quite clearly.
Thank you so much, Kiko. So for the past 3 weeks, we have managed to go through lesson planning as an essential technique for educators who intend to teach virtual classrooms, and not necessarily for online teaching. Even in the normal physical class teaching, lesson planning is very key. We also managed to go through content development for purposes of doing your virtual classrooms because of the new normal that we have. And then we summed it up the last week on module 3, which was on creating an assessment model for your learners, an effective assessment model. So quickly from your feedback, I'll be going through those key areas that most of you responded to in the feedback form that you thought they were necessary for us to relook at. So into the first module that we looked at on lesson planning, I was able to take you through how you plan your lesson online, how then you design your lesson based on the two frameworks, that is the cognitive skill framework or the Bloom's taxonomy, and also the TPAC framework. We also looked at the lesson design formats, that is synchronous versus asynchronous lesson models. And then we looked at a practice session where you guys were supposed to do a skill plan on the platform. That was your takeaway assignment, which I'm happy majority of you managed to attempt on it, and you did well. So so under the lesson planning, we basically looked at a general format for a lesson plan, where a lesson plan needs to have objectives, a structure, in the sense that you also need to map out things like timing, and then being a slightly different kind of a lesson, because you'll be meeting learners virtually. We also said you should remember to allocate some time for student participation, and also time for virtual breaks, so as to allow students to chat and use maybe the bathroom and share feedback or reflect on how the new format is going on. So basically, the lesson plan will just shift a little bit from our legacy lesson planning design, where you have an introduction, you have lesson development, you have conclusion and assessment. This is just shifting it now to an online, but with a slight improvement, and also taking consideration that you'll not be meeting the learners physically. And therefore, in your lesson plan, we also talked about the need for you to incorporate what we call the Bloom's taxonomic skill levels in how you plan your lesson, in the sense that as you plan your lesson, the key inquiry questions that you'll be putting out, let them be synchronized, or let them be aligned to the 6 cognitive skill level. That is the knowledge level, which is the lowermost level in the Bloom's taxonomy, where the learners need to recall facts and or rather recognize or recall relevant knowledge from long-term memories. We talked of questions that can elicit this level, or that can bring up this level, would be questions like define, questions like identify. Yeah, those are some of the questions we said in your lesson plan should be able to invoke that level of the cognitive skill. On to the other level on understanding or comprehension, we said in designing your lesson plan, let it highlight things like describe, distinguish, explain. The purpose of this level of the Bloom's taxonomy is to test the students' understanding, students' ability to summarize and describe in their own words. But as we proceed with your lesson on much higher levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, the application level where the students will be able to apply the knowledge that they'll be getting into in new formats, or rather transfer the learning to their own life or context. Keywords such as apply, compare, and contrast are some of the keywords that we looked at. Then analysis level in the Bloom's taxonomy, in your lesson plan, it should be able to come out in the sense that the questions that you use will encourage students to break material into parts and describe patterns and relationships among parts. And then we had the synthesis level, which we said you can bring it out very well, so that the questions that you use in your lesson plan will encourage, or rather activities that you'll be using will be encourage students to create something new by using a combination of ideas from different sources to form a new one. And then finally, we said the uppermost level, that is the evaluation, will deal with questions that will encourage students to develop opinions and make value decisions about issues based on a specific criteria. So we talked of key questions here, or keywords such as assess, critique, determine, judge, justify. And you could talk of a question like, do you think eating sugary stuff is a bad thing? So you see, these are questions that is leaving students to open and be able to synthesize ideas and be able to evaluate a scenario and be able to give their argument of the scenario. We also say that in designing your lesson plan, you also need to put into consideration a framework we refer to as the technology, pedagogy, and content knowledge, or TPAC framework, since that our lessons will be online and will be incorporating in integration of ICT. So how important is this TPAC framework? Probably just a brief overview of the TPAC is a framework that was introduced back in 2006 at the Michigan State University, which identified primary forms of knowledge. This talking of content knowledge, the CK, pedagogical knowledge, the PK, and the technological knowledge. All these interrelated into what we call a Venn diagram. A Venn diagram is just a diagram represented by circles, such that each circle represents an element or a subject and how it's related to the other. So we have an interrelated types of knowledge here, the technological knowledge, the content knowledge, and the pedagogical knowledge. And in those specific areas of interrelation, at the middle point, we have the sweet spot, or what we call the Rolio triangle, that brings out how the 3 subjects or elements are interdependent. So into the first content knowledge, CK, we said, as you design your lesson and you want to incorporate, you want to bring it online. So what is your content? Do you know your content well? It simply talks about you as an educator having a solid understanding of the lesson concept, or what we commonly refer to as mastery of content. Then the pedagogical knowledge is how do you intend to deliver this lesson or this content that you're planning for to the learners. So you're bringing in such a pedagogical design such as active teaching and learning, problem-based learning, blended learning, all that, not forgetting what we call the 21st century learning design framework. And then for the technological knowledge, we are looking at you as an educator. How well do you know how to use the technology to present your concept? So what digital tools are available for you so that you can use them at your disposal to communicate what you want to communicate to your learners? For example, in your lesson plan, you will, maybe students will need to label a diagram and present. So the ability to fill in the blanks with an answer key, or maybe find images from the internet or create slides. This is what we call technological content. But then these three levels or elements of the TPAC framework are interrelated in zones. The zones in which they are interrelated, we call them the pedagogical content knowledge. That is a zone of interactivity between pedagogical content and knowledge and pedagogical content, pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge. And then we have the region of intersection between technological knowledge and content knowledge, the TCK. I hope you can see that on my diagram, probably if I can use my pointer. So this region between pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge, we call it pedagogical content knowledge here. And then we have this other region, which we call the technological content knowledge, between technology and content knowledge, their relationship there. And then we have the technological pedagogical knowledge, a region interdependent between this subject and this other subject, or this element and this other element. At the center is where we have the sweet spot, or the Rolio triangle, which I talked about as now the TPAC, where the three forms of knowledge intersect. That's the technological knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and the content knowledge. What is the significance of all this? For the PCK, it's just trying to highlight your understanding, the understanding of the best practices for teaching specific content to your specific students. Then for the technological content knowledge is trying to bring out knowing how the digital tools available to you can enhance or transform the content, and how it is delivered to students, and how your students can interact with it. Then for the technological pedagogical knowledge, the TPK, is understanding how to use your digital tools as a vehicle to the learning outcomes and experiences that you want. So for the sweet spot, now the TPAC, or the Rolio triangle in the middle of all that Venn diagram, this is represents a full understanding of how to teach with technology, keeping in mind that this is not the same as having knowledge of each of the three primary concepts in video. So this is a region where you blend in all the three forms of knowledge as an educator. So in your lesson design, always consider the Bloom's taxonomy, or the cognitive skill framework, and the TPAC and the TPAC framework. We went ahead and looked at different types of lesson formats. Now that you are designing your lesson plan, what lesson format do you want to use in your e-learning or to adapt for your teaching? We talked of asynchronous versus synchronous. Asynchronous in this case also referred to as a self-paced learning, where students just learn on their own without your physical presence or without your virtual presence there to take the students into a live mode session like what I'm doing right now. So the course content and or lesson pre-recorded videos, lectures, and tutorials are shared maybe on a lesson management system. This is a self-paced learning approach whereby the students will just go through the material at their own pace and at their own time. So the students are not bound by being present online at the same time as the educator or you, the teacher. Yeah, so the learner is able to control the amount of material they consume, as well as duration of time they need to learn the new information properly. And then we have the synchronous version, or the synchronous format, where we said this is a live online class, like what we are doing right now, where you as the teacher, you organize a virtual meeting in a room, for example, on Google Meet, on Zoom, on Microsoft Teams, whichever platform that fits you. and the students and the teachers meet together to communicate with voice or video or even using a virtual whiteboard. Students and instructors need to be online at the same time. So you and your learners are online at the same time, so that at any given time, the learners, you can communicate to learners in real time. So with these two modes of lesson design format, whichever you prefer to use in delivering your lesson, you should consider appropriate lesson plan in order to guide your content delivery. So with the appropriate lesson plan, I gave a sample lesson plan that we can adapt very quickly to design our lessons that we need to deliver them online. I looked at the 4A plan model, which 4S simply stands for activating prior knowledge as the first A in the model, then acquiring new knowledge as the second A in the model, application part, and assessment. When you look at those 4A model, they are in compliance with the cognitive skill level, that is the Bloom's taxonomy. So in activating prior knowledge, this could fall under our legacy lesson plan under the introduction part, where in our legacy lesson plan, we always say in the introduction, you can review the previous lesson. You can use question and answer method. You can use brainstorming. You can use concept maps and games and just quite a number of things to review what knowledge do learners have before they come into this, they learn this new knowledge. So you're simply assessing the entry level of the learner in the activating prior knowledge. In the acquiring new knowledge, which can map up to lesson development, you are simply promoting higher order thinking to enable students to make connections and interconnections between the course materials and real life experiences. So key inquiry questions here, you will need them. You will need questions that will be able to highlight the higher level cognitive skills in the Bloom's taxonomy. How can you be able to, what are some of the methods or activities you could have used here? You can bring in video, open education resources such as videos. You can invite guest speakers into your classroom at that point. You can bring in active reading. You can bring in role play. You can bring in things like think, pair, and share. And then in the application section, where now you are consolidating what has been learned to make it relevant, you can use things like exit slips, sharing of products, debriefing processes, performances, publications, and all that. You can still use also simulations. I'll talk about this in our subsequent models. And then finally, you do your assessment in the lesson plan to gauge what has been learned and what needs to be further developed. This is a point where now there is a reflection on your side as an educator and also on the side of the learners. Have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? If not, can I reprogram or restructure my approach so that I can teach the same concept? And if learners have not also understood, they need to re-gauge and try to understand their learning skills, to improve on their learning skills. So you could use things like quizzes, both open and closed. You could use think and pair. You could also use assessment discussion postings and clickers, and you can even use surveys and polling everywhere just to find out how did the lesson go, what needs to be improved. We went ahead and did a takeaway assignment on skill plan. So skill plan in the sense that you guys were supposed to develop a simple skill plan, which included a topic, a subtopic, and the skill that you think your learners will want. This is a simple format of a lesson plan in general. So you just need to know the topic that you want to teach. You need to know the subtopic, and then what skills from the learning outcomes that are highlighted in the curricula, what skills do you want your learners to have learned by the end of that lesson? This is something that you are supposed to develop on the Angaza platform. Probably if I can take you quickly through Angaza platform so that we can be able to show you what you needed to have done on the Angaza platform. So as it's taking some time to load, let me just load it, and then I'll be able to take you through this very quickly. It seems I have an issue, a challenge on my end. Probably, let me demonstrate this towards the end so that we can save some more time for this. Then I'll be able to take you through this very elaborately, or maybe Kiko at some point you'll be able to show us it. Okay, probably. So into that this marked the end of the first module on lesson planning. It culminated with this assignment that I'm happy majority of you really did it very well, and you are able to develop your skill plans and upload them onto the system. So for those of you who wanted to have a look at the skill plan, maybe towards the end, Kiko or I will be able to take you through how to find your skill plan that you have designed on the platform, because some of us had given feedback that they cannot access what they had made or what they had designed at the skill plan at the skill plan level. So going forward to module 2, that is where we looked at content development. In content development, we looked at ways in which you can be able to create an exemplary lesson, keeping into consideration those resources at your disposal, so that you make an interactive lesson where learners can both, which can foster higher level skills in learners online. Remember, slightly different from the face-to-face where you have control of the learner. You are able to see your learner in classroom. Here you have no control of the learner. Whatever happens behind that screen, you as an educator, you cannot tell. So you need to be equipped with the skills that will make your lesson very attractive, very exemplary, so that you don't lose the learners during your lesson. Remember, the attention span of any learner cannot surpass 30 to 40 minutes. That's why we always have lessons for secondary designed at 40 minutes, for primary designed at 30 to 35 minutes. So in designing your lesson that maybe might want to take 1 hour, then you must be extraordinarily good when it comes to integrating technology into your lesson. We say that as you design your lesson, aspire to have a lesson where you will introduce the learners to the concept, allow them to work on the skills by themselves, and also build up a developing and also build up for developing summative assessment. This is something that we look at in the assessment module in module 3. So what are some of the resources that we looked at in module 2 that would help us as an educator to develop an exemplary lesson? I picked on a few. This is not all that we can exhaust. There are so many resources out there. But these 4 that I looked at were key in terms of using them in your class to make your lesson good, interactive, and to give students participatory chances so that your lesson is not boring. So the first resources that we looked at was the open education resource. Open education resources, in this case, we said the OERs are what we can call openly licensed text media and other digital assets that are useful for teaching, learning, and assessing, as well as for research purposes. In coming up with OERs, we said you can always get them in public domain or on the internet, released under what we call an open license, which permits no cost access and no cost in using, no cost in adapting and redistributing them. And therefore we said any open education resource bears this characteristic, retainability. It means that you have the right to make, own, or control copies of the content. For example, when you download, let's say, an article or you download notes, you can edit them when they fall under the open education resource and even own them, because it is under OER, open education resource, or open license. You can reuse them. Reusing them meaning the right to use the content in a wide range of ways. for example, in a class, in a study group, or in a website. And then you can also revise the open education resources, meaning you can adapt them or adjust them to and alter the content to suit your preferred class or students. And then remixing them, meaning you can recombine the original or the revised content with other materials to create something new. And then redistributing, meaning the right to share copies of the original content without facing issues to do with legal issues. So those are the characteristics of open education resource. So what makes education resources useful, or what is the rationale of using OERs? We said in using OERs, you have quite a number of benefits. When we talk about ubiquitous, they can be expanded. They can be expanded to use them for different learning purposes. In other words, access to this material can be done anywhere, anytime. If you have a video on let's say teaching science in grade 6, you can be able to share, you can put this, you can upload this video in a Google Drive, for example, and your learners can access that video on learning science at any given time from anywhere. And like maybe if you are using a textbook that is stored somewhere in a school library, where for any learner to access this book, he must go to the library physically and borrow the book. And maybe he finds the book has already been borrowed, he might not be able to access it. So this makes OERs a better resource. Adaptability, where we say they can be modified or customized to suit topics or content that is relevant to the course. And then for versatility, we said the enhancement of the course material such that text, images, and videos can be used to support different learning styles. Then proliferation, where we say they can be disseminated very fast over the internet. And like if you're using, for example, ebooks, if you have an ebook, you can share with 1,000 people within a matter of minutes. And like if you are to distribute one single hard copy book, by the time you reach the 1,000 person, it will have taken you maybe 7 years if you assume each book will be given to a person per day. So 1,000 days, you can imagine how long that will take. The knowledge will be maybe obsolete. And then there are cost saving for students because all the readings are available online, which saves students hundreds of money in buying resources and storage. Then we looked at educational online. Where do we get such open education resources? I looked at a site where we can get all these resources for all the subjects. And I think this was also shared with you in the previous emails, where you can get free OER sites which are subject specific. I took you through some of the sites that are subject specific. If you want open education resources for English, if you want open education resources for science, if you want open education resources for mathematics, you'll find all these here. Some of the feedback that I was receiving from the previous modules, guys were really asking, how do I get, for example, how do I use, let's say, how do I draw graphs? How do I get 3D, for example, teaching mathematics, shapes and all that? All these, for example, things like GeoGebra, these are open education resources that can be gotten for free from the internet. So teachers, we have no excuse in making our lessons better and interactive when it comes to teaching online. We have everything at our disposal. You don't need to spend a single cent in buying softwares that are always having some underlying penalties. For example, updating that software, you have to call somebody who installed it. When you can get such softwares for free online, and you will not be tied to tenderpreneurs who will want to take advantage of schools. So we also looked at homegrown open education resource sites. For example, the JESI Global eSchools and Community Initiative site that offers open education resources for students. I was able to take you through some of them. Probably I'll do a repeat on that. So looking at this homepage for this site, this is a site that has been generated by teachers here in the country under the stewardship of the Global eSchools and Community Initiative. This is a group that was introduced or started by the former UN Secretary General, ICT Task Force under Kofi Annan stewardship, to try and bring or integrate ICT, communicate, be able to bring everybody on board, teachers, learners, and even the board of management for schools, to integrate ICT in classroom. And therefore, they have been carrying on a pilot project since 2017 in secondary schools in Kenya, about 80 schools. And the result is what you can see. So students, for this project, it started with high school. So for primary teachers, we have going into phase 2 to design more resources for learners. So any teacher can be able to select any concept that you want here. For example, if you are to go to, let's say, mathematics, a mathematics lesson in high school, you can go to Form 1. When you click on Form 1, you have lessons. So this site did not put everything onto it in mathematics. They did a survey on what we call difficult to learn or difficult to teach lesson concepts, and they developed resources regarding that. For example, length of an arc, for example, in Form 1, how do you teach that? You'll find a resource here. A student can be able to go through this resource and navigate it on it and learn for himself. Even a teacher, you can borrow a lot from this. By navigating through this lesson, you'll be able to go through it and see how did this teacher design this lesson. Calculation of circumference, for example, of a circle. Pre-knowledge, remember what I was talking about, acquiring, you want to assess the pre-knowledge of the learner. The learner should have known how to calculate the circumference of a circle, for instance, before he knows how to get the length of an arc. Yeah. So these are resources that are free for you to use at your disposal. Any teacher, you can be able to go through them. The learners can still go through them. And this access, you don't pay any fee for them, for you to access these resources. They are free. These are designed by Kenyan teachers here, me being one of them, so that to help tens, thousands of teachers out there who are having issues with integrating ICT in their classroom. We still have another homegrown open education resource site, the Snaplify, which I talked about and said, Snaplify gives you a wide range of books for free. You can download so many ebooks here. This is a company that has partnered with local publishers to put books onto this site for free, and some you pay a very small amount. Other than buying a book at 500 shillings, a textbook, you can get it at 50 bob, and you have the book. You can access it at any given time. So these are sites that you guys need to take advantage of. Buying textbook, teacher benefits, past exam papers. You see all this. This is a site that you can use. These are homegrown solutions for open education resources. These other ones, I think, will still continue to share the sites for you guys so that you can be able to go through them at your own free time. We also looked at another resource we call the concept map. Concept map, I said, these are visual organizers that can enrich student understanding of new concepts. You are simply a diagrammatic representation of knowledge. Other than dictating notes, other than telling students, plants have roots and the roots get water. You put it into a diagram, a visual organizer like what you can see on your slide there. So this visual organizer is what we call a concept map. How do you create a concept map? Concept maps can be created in any platform. You can create concept map even in PowerPoint. You can create concept map in Microsoft Word. You can also use softwares that are already designed out there for creating a concept map. For example, if you go to a Word document, I want to share this onto your screen. If you go to this Word document, you can be able to create your concept map very well using Microsoft Word by just clicking on shapes, getting shapes and putting them there. For example, if maybe I could just zoom in a little bit on this one. I want to zoom in on this. Let me see if it can take that. Awesome. So if, for example, if you look at this, you can be able to see that with this diagram, for example, a teacher teaching science at grade 5 or grade 4 classification of animals into mammals, reptiles, and amphibians, you can use a concept map to communicate to students on issues to do with how you classify animals, starting with the key idea at the center, animals, types of animals, the ones in yellow, mammals, reptiles, amphibians. Then what are the characteristics of these animals? Each cluster, for example, for mammals, one of the characteristics, they have a backbone. This concept map can be able to communicate something within a very short time. What could have taken you like so many years to make will take you so many lessons to communicate will take you a very short time. We could also use softwares like visual understanding environment. If you can be able to see my diagram on that far end, these are visual understanding environment. It's a software that has been made to be able to use to design a concept map. For example, what you can see on my board there is a concept map on an entire topic in Form 1, Introduction to Physics. So when you design such a thing and you take it to your student, the key idea being here, physics. So what is physics? A branch of science that deals with the study of matter and its relationship to energy. Then what are the branches of physics? You have mechanics, you have thermodynamics, you have waves, you have electricity. So you can use a software, and this is an open source, it's a free software, which I think we also shared the link for you guys to be able to download it so that you can explore how to go about it. If you don't want to go the software way, go the simpler way using the Microsoft Word as a way to design your concept map. So I was able to take you through how to come up with a concept map in Microsoft Word, which I think it's okay. Let me just do a recap on that so that most people don't feel left out. So when you open your Microsoft Office Word, how can you create as it loads? Then when you open a blank document like that, you go to the Insert tab. The Insert tab is at the topmost part. So when you click on Insert, it will open for you a drop down where you can be able to insert shapes, but before you in canvas like that. So in this drawing canvas, you can now insert anything that you want. For example, if you want to talk about types of characteristic of plants, for example, you choose a shape, like maybe a circle, you put it at that center part, right? Then filling part, you can leave it maybe yellow, and then you insert a text inside. What is your key idea? You want to talk about plants, for example. So you have plants, right? So let me just highlight that so that we have that. Let me redo that. So, so you key in, you type in the shape plants, yeah. So when you're talking about this, what do you want to know about plants? Maybe you want to know characteristic of plants. So you will put a link, still another shape. You could use a different one, for example. You could put that there, right? Put another one there. And put another one there. So what do you want to say about first characteristics of plants? Plants have, let's say, leaves. So how do you link this characteristic of plant to the plant itself? Your main idea, the central idea. You use arrows. So you select on the arrow there. The moment you touch on this diagram, it highlights, then you pull the arrow there. There we go. We have a link between plants and this characteristic. For example, you want to add a text there, and you want maybe your text to be in red. So you'll say plant have leaves, right? So what do leaves do? What's the function of the leaves? So the leaves, we say they are used maybe for maybe transpiration, or maybe to trap sunlight to manufacture plant food. You can continue with your diagram irrespective of how big you want it. It can be as big as you want. So with this, when you go to your classroom, you don't need to be carrying millions and millions of textbooks to refer to diagrams that you want your learners to learn. Yeah, you could also say maybe these plants have, the color is not maybe very visible. Let me just change that shape field to that. Or maybe because it's another level, I can change it to green. Leaves are green, yes. Then you talk about roots. Yeah, so roots, maybe we can say they are brown. Is that brown? Maybe we can talk about roots being brown. Then you add text there and you call these roots. So you have roots there. So plants have roots. So what is the function of roots? You can now add another shape there and say function of roots is that the function of roots is that they source for water and minerals. Water and minerals. So that's the function of the roots, to source for water and minerals. And there you have your sample of a concept, map that you can use to decide. The importance of using concept map is that these are visual representation of knowledge. They always say you easily remember when you see other than when you are told. So you see, when the learners can be able to visualize knowledge like this, it becomes very interesting for them. It enhances their retention span, and therefore remembering it becomes very easy for you as an educator. So concept maps are very good ways of teaching your lesson in classroom. So going forward, we said that in designing your concept maps, you need to have key things that you should have your main idea of what you want to represent your concept map to be. You also need to know how, where, when. So your concept map should answer some of those questions: who, why, what, how, where, right? And using concept maps, we said they help children or learners to organize new information, and therefore helps them to clarify the structure ideas. It also helps students to make meaningful connections between the main idea, which we said is our central main idea, most idea, and other information. They are also easy to construct and can be used within any content area. Also, they help learners grasp the material, not necessarily visually impaired learners. They're also very good for learners who are very good at visualizing things, but basically for all learners to be able to grasp ideas easily. And because they utilize a full range of left and right hemispheres of the brain, yeah, they help in recalling and remembrance very, very easily. We looked at when to use, how can you use concept maps? For example, you can use concept maps in class pre-assessment. You want to introduce a new concept or a new topic. You can go in there and use a concept map to show the learners how the knowledge will be interrelated. You can use them as a whole class activity, for example. And you can also use them maybe as an assignment for them to be filling in. That you have taught a concept and you want to test them whether they have understood the concept. So you bring in an idea of a mind map or a concept map with some information missing, and you let them come and fill in the missing information to gauge whether they have understood the concept that you have been able to communicate. We also looked at another technology that you can use to make very good lesson, what we call the photo story. A photo story, I said, is simply using technology to tell a story. Yeah, digital storytelling can be used to reinforce subject matter, to share an experience, or present some new information in a creative and an interesting way. If for those of you who grew up in the 80s and 70s towards the late 90s, there was this daily newspaper columnist called Wahome Mutai, or what guys used to call him Whispers. I remember my father could just buy a newspaper just to go and follow the story by Whispers. And he never used to write a lot. He just used to use graphics to communicate or to give his story. So telling a story using photos or digital storytelling is another one way of doing things. Some of us who grew up still then, we used to buy a newspaper just to get the Super Striker magazine that used to be stuck inside. I think it used to come on every Sunday or Saturday. That magazine had just photos of these footballers telling a story how they went to maybe to the cold zones and played football there. They scored many goals. You could see all that, and it was very interesting. If they could write this story in a novel form, most of us could never have get a chance to read those stories. But looking at it and looking at the photos that used to tell a story, you used to follow that story well. So digital storytelling as a presentation tool is very appealing to the diverse learning styles of students. Yeah, it also capitalizes on students' creative talents and allows their work to be published on the internet for others to view and also critique. So when creating your digital photo story, what are some of the tips that you must always use before you can create your digital photo? Identify the main idea that you want to tell about. So what is the main idea that you want your story to tell? Yeah. For example, you want to tell about my school, or you want to tell about my favorite food, or you want to tell about maybe you want to tell about volcanic activities when you're teaching social studies or geography. You can use a digital photo story. Bring that volcanic activity in your classroom in form of a photo, narrate to the students. They will be able to learn easily. Seeing a photo of a volcanic eruption in, let's say, Indonesia, while yourself, you are here in a place called Kongoya. So you are teaching learners about volcanicity and showing them how volcanic eruption takes place in Indonesia. You've brought Indonesia to Kenya through digital photo story. So you also need to design a plan on what and how and where and why you want to teach that story. Collect the data. This will mean images that you need to get. You'll outsource them from the internet. Narrative voice. If your voice is not very good, hire somebody to do the narration for you. Or even music. You need to look for some music to accompany your digital photo story. And then you need to develop the digital photo story itself, and then share and present and publish the digital photo story. Digital photo stories, I said we can use so many, quite a number of software that we have. We have digital photo stories that we can use softwares like the free photo story by Microsoft. It's a free software that you can download for free on your computer or on your tablet. Yeah, probably this is how the software looks. When you download it, we call it the photo story for Windows. This is how it looks. When you open the homepage, it will ask you, select one of the following options. Do you want to begin a new story? Do you want to edit or edit a project that you had already started on? Or do you want to play a story? Or do you want to continue working on a current story? So maybe just to show you in a preview on how a digital photo story looks like, when you use such a software, I had created quite a number of them on my case. So if I look at this software, I want to show you a sample of a digital photo story that I've come up with just to talk about myself as a transformational teacher. So as it opens up, so that is my school. I'm creating a digital photo story about my school. So if I want to preview it, probably let me preview it so that you can see what digital story can do for you in your classroom. that photo was taken by Mastercard Foundation, and they used it to feature me sometime this year in their 2020 report on secondary education. So you can be able to narrate a story on some of the achievements. You can be able to narrate a story on a concept that you want to teach in classroom. So
Teacher Maxwell, kindly increase the volume.
pardon?
Kindly increase your volume. We can barely hear you.
Okay, right now?
It's still low.
Is that clear?
Not yet.
What about now?
Maybe a bit higher, slowly, just a more.
Okay, so
Perfect.
let me try to perfect, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So digital photo stories are very key when it comes to teaching abstract concepts that probably you had no idea of how to go about them. You can source for photos.
Sorry, it has gone low, Teacher Maxwell. Sorry, it has gone low again.
What about now?
Maybe a little bit higher.
Hey, issues to do with technology. I'll try to amplify it so that you'll hear me clearly. So what I'm saying is digital photo stories can allow you to edit and add motion to pictures. They can allow you to do text narration. And also you can have an inbuilt music generator that you can use to make your lesson very, very interesting. So aspire to use this. We also shared this, I think, with you on your emails. You can where to download this from, so that you can use it and exploit how best you can use it in your classroom. So when we looked also at how you can be able to package your lesson, packaging your lesson, we said, now that you've developed your lesson, you need to package your lesson. Whether you'll go the synchronous way or the asynchronous way, we said you can decide to use slides, presentation slides like Microsoft PowerPoint slides or Google slides, like what I'm using right now, to teach your lesson. But depending on what you choose on, your slides should be the use of your slide should be such that they convey visual ideas, graphs, and tables. They summarize facts, and they present questions for discussion. Your slides also should be able to obey the 6x6 rule, whereby no more than 6 bullets with 6 words per bullet. A bullet is a highlight, or for example, number 1. What appears on number 1, we should not have more than 6 statements on your presentation slide, and your statement should not have more than 6 words in it. Yeah. And then you also use large fonts for clarity and for visibility for your audience, and also use images that support or illustrate the ideas, not simply for decorative purposes. For example, a slide appearing on your teaching on what is light, you cannot have a picture of a cow there, because a cow is not related to light. So, but having a picture of a bulb there, these are an image that is related to what you want to convey. And then you can also use what we call softwares or lesson management systems, learning management systems, to package your lesson. A very good example of a free software that I showed you guys on how to use is the EXE learning software. An EXE learning software is free for you to download. What you only need to do is, when you go to your browser, you click on you search for EXE. You search for EXE learning. It will take you to this homepage of EXE, and then you want to download it. So for example, when you click on EXE learning, it takes you here. When it takes you to EXE learning free software tool for create educational content, you click on downloads. Then you'll be able to choose which operating system are you using on your computer. Is it you're using Linux, or using the Mac operating system, or are you using the Microsoft Windows? So for most of us, because we are so used to Microsoft Windows, you can install any of these versions. So when you click on any of this, it will install it in your machine, and you are ready to use the EXE. So how do we use the EXE to package your lesson? So EXE, I've already looked at an example of a lesson here that has been packaged using EXE. So an EXE lesson looks like this. So if you want to package, this is after you have exported the lesson, this is how it will look. You're able to create web pages that can be portable. You can carry them in a flash disk, go and install them on your learners' machines, share with your learners even on email, and they'll be able to go through this topic on their own, as long as they have a suitable browser, like let's say Google or Microsoft, the Microsoft browser or Firefox, and it is not online, it is offline. So once you package your lesson, you can the learners can be able to access this content offline without necessarily having to have the internet to go through this lesson. And it gives you those easy navigation buttons for them to be able to go through them. Yeah. So these are lessons that was designed by a friend of mine, George, to see how to measurement is all about in physics. So I think we also shared this for you to download the EXE, and probably I would take some more time, like 5 minutes, to take you to the EXE itself, and just to see how you can use EXE. How do you start to use an EXE software to package your lesson? Let's say as it loads. Let me do a search for it. So once you install your EXE app into your desktop or your laptop or your tablet, it will be able to, as it loads, let me hope it's loading. So there we have it. This is how it opens. So you have to select the language which you want to create your content in English, and then select browser that you'll be using, Google Chrome, Firefox, or whichever that Internet Explorer that you want to use. So once you have done that, you then be able to save it. So you save this. You are creating a new content. It takes you to a home page. So in your home page, these are the tabs and tools that you can use to start your authoring. Yeah. So for example, in the authoring, you want to add a page. It's more or less like a topic or a lesson planning guide, but in real sense, this is something you'll export onto a lesson management system or just save it into a flash and share it with the learners. So with regard to this, I want to rename this tab. So I've added a page and I want to rename it. So renaming it, I want to call it a topic. Let's say I want to teach a topic like magnetism. So my topic for the day will be magnetism. It shows there. I'll add a page for the subtopic. I'll rename it again. And I want my subtopic section to be subtopic. I want it to be magnetic field patterns. Right? And then you say, okay. So you see, you are cascading your lesson into that format. If I add another page, I want, let's say, to look at the unit, or maybe I want to look at maybe lesson objectives. So I will rename that to objectives. Yeah. So the objectives there, you will be able to maybe under that you'll have to add, let's say, textual information, for example. So you need to type in under this tab, you need to type in, you want to add in textual information. So let's say which free text you want to do objectives, you put it right there. So objectives. So you'll say under the objectives, so you want to tell learners maybe by the end of this lesson, And because this is a lesson that the learners are going to go through it themselves, let the language you use be first persona, in the sense that you want to have these learners know that it is referring to them. So you should say, by the end of this lesson, maybe you should. Don't say by the end of this lesson the learner should. No. Let it not be passive. Let it be first persona. You should be able to define magnetic field pattern. A magnetic field, or for example. Yeah, and that is it. So once you're done that, you can save all that. So you click on this and it saves there. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define a magnetic field. You can add, if you are doing, for example, an assessment. So this is how you can you can organize your lesson from topic, subtopic, objectives. You go to introduction by adding just a page and renaming it. Then you populate. So populating your sections, we have this we call interactive devices within the software. Interactive devices, for example, close activity, drop down, GeoGebra. Somebody was asking, how can I use 3D to teach my lessons in online? So GeoGebra already comes pre-installed in this software for you. Yeah. So you can select what you want, insert a GeoGebra activity from www.geogebra. It requires an internet connection, at least for that one. All this, you can be able to do it as a teacher. We're packaging your lesson online. Then once you have packaged your lesson like that, once you have packaged your lesson, probably let me minimize this. And also minimize this. So once you have done your lesson, you come up to something close to what I had already shown you earlier on the type of lesson that you have looked at. So once you package your lesson, it will look like this. You see the highlights. It will be able to appear with these tabs here: author, content, objectives, measurement, introduction, all these. This is how the learner will be able to see the lesson. And this is very interesting because it's very interactive. The learners can even watch videos on this. Open education resources we are discussing about. Even you can include assessment in it like that. Yeah. So we also went ahead and said that for your assignment, you are supposed to have designed what we call a concept map for this module. You are supposed to have designed a concept map, which majority of you also did it very well in Word, and you are able to upload them comfortably. Then the last module that we looked at last week was on assessment development. And under assessment, we said it's good for a teacher to model your assessment to align itself to the cognitive skill levels that we had looked at in module 1. Remember I said that teachers who develop useful assessment and provide corrective instructions to the learners, give the learners a second chance to demonstrate success, can improve their instruction, and also bring about inclusive and equitable quality education that promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Assessment design had some guiding principles that I took you through very quickly last week, where we talked about practicality, yeah, which refers to the time and cost constraint during the construction and administration of your assessment. Reliability, to refer to the stability of the scores over time. Your validity, yeah. This is just to refer to whether or not the test measures what it claims to measure. And then authenticity, where we looked at whether your assessment model contains natural language and meaningful, relevant and interesting topics that replicate real-world experiences. And then the washback characteristic for an assessment model we talked about, talking about the consequence of the assessment on the teaching and learning. Remember, your teaching and learning, the assessment can have a positive consequence or negative or negative consequence. We looked at different types of assessment models, that is diagnostic, where we talked about an assessment that tries to inquire to see whether the learners already know some knowledge or background knowledge before you teach that concept. This one comes in the first phase of your lesson, acquiring new knowledge in the assessing prior knowledge. And then we looked at formative assessment, where we said in formative assessment, you want to assess, you want to assess for learning. Is learning taking place as you teach, so that you can adjust your teaching methodology? We want to assess, these are things like takeaway assignments at end of a class to assess whether the learners got the knowledge you have taught within that particular class. Then for summative assessment, we say it assesses assessment of learning, not for learning, assessment of learning at the very end. Things like end of term exams, things like KCSE exams, KCP exams, all these are examples of summative assessment. So we said formative assessment, for example, cycle where it to examine the students' work, then inform your knowledge as a teacher, then that will inform your instruction, and later on administer the tasks. For summative, we said it comes at the end of the term, or mid-term exams, and or end of unit chapters or questions that you need to test. Then we looked at different types of summative assessment in e-learning, where we talked about online presentations, can use projects, and even multiple choices. Then tips of using assessment in e-learning. Remember, we said using assessment, using grading rubrics, a very important thing, where we said rubrics are composed of 4 basic parts. That is the descriptor, where we looked at the characteristics being the rows, then the descriptor being within the cells. Then we looked at the scale, a scale giving you the grading. Of 3 to 1 or 1 to 3. Yeah, just fix my audio, it's messing me up. Rubric, we said it has the criteria which defines what are you assessing, what is the outcome that you want the learners to have achieved on it. Then we talked about the characteristic or the rows to be rated, the skill level and all that. Then we looked about the scaling, or rather what you can call the levels of master, or the scale, which are the columns. Common levels of master we could talk of: exceeds expectation, meets expectation, nears expectation, or below expectation. I think this is what CBC is all about when you're developing rubrics for grade 4 exams that were administered at the beginning of early this year. You could also use things like exemplary, proficient, marginal, or unacceptable. And or you could also use things like mastery, proficient, developing, or novice. Or you could even decide to use points, a ratio of 4, 3, 2, 3 to 1. We looked at an example of a good evaluation rubric, which I was able to show you. So as an example of a student-based project evaluation rubric, where, for example, this one was looking at the organization of the student. They were doing a group presentation. I hope this can be able to zoom in. Yes, awesome. So where this you want to look at how are the students organized, what was the quality of their content, what was the quality of the group presentation, yeah, what was the quality of the group research, and what was the quality of the group communication. Then the scaling, you're giving them fair 1 to 5, excellent 16 to 20. For example, as a student who is fairly organized, his or her presentation does not clearly communicate the topic information, even with spoken explanation. This, what I'm reading here, is what we call a descriptor. For an excellent group, the presentation is well organized and neat and communicates very clearly the topic information for an excellent. So the descriptor varies according to the scale: fair, satisfactory, good, or excellent. Then we went ahead and looked at how to analyze the results in making a good assessment model. So in analyzing the results, we say that you need to identify trends and areas of improvement, yeah, where the purpose of your assessment in e-learning, first of all, is to let the learners know where they stand in terms of their academic progress and proficiency. And secondly, it gives an e-learning professional, who is you, the educator, the ability to identify trends and weaknesses of the e-learning course. Then we also went ahead and looked at diversifying your assessment method. Don't just stick to one type of assessment. So use a wide range of assessment to cater for different learning styles. Remember that every learner is unique. They each have different learning needs and require different learning materials and e-learning activities to absorb information effectively. Yeah. And then you also need to do some research beforehand to see which type of assessment are best for your learners and which one will most accurately assess their skills and knowledge base. And then also keeping in mind that summative assessment does not provide learners with timely feedback they can use to improve on their learning behaviors. So as such, you need to pair them up, a summative assessment with maybe formative assessment or diagnostic assessment. So have a blend of all the forms of assessment when you're designing your assessment model. And then finally, you need to distinguish between summative and formative assessment. Nowhere to use summative, nowhere to use formative assessment. I quickly looked at what else we can call an adaptive assessment model, which is tailor-made specifically for that is specifically to examine each individual based on their performance on a previous item or on a previous task. So this is a mode of assessment that we can use in assessing our online learning, where you don't treat every learner one formula for everybody. Each learner is unique. You can only assess a learner based on their previous performance. So unlike what we have, the formative assessments we have going on in our schools, they treat every learner the same. We don't need to assess learners using a 6Ps approach. Yeah, let us learn to adapt assessment to each individual learner's abilities. If a learner is not very good in arithmetic, he cannot be assessed as that learner who is very good in mathematics. So we design assessment models based on the learner's previous ability levels. So these are a modern way of looking at an adaptive lesson. I had a very good example of an adaptive lesson there for you to have a look at.
Ready to have some fun? We are going to ask you some questions. To answer the question, move the mouse over your answer choice and click on it, just like this. Are you ready? Let's go! Click on the letters that spell the word mother. Sensational! Keep going. Not quite. Try again. That's great! Click on another one. Nice try. Let's look at this in a different way.
So you see, that's already an assessment that has been adapted into the computer. It's already showing the learner, it has already assessed the ability of this learner. So it's going to give him a more elaborate task that will help him
is the correct
to do that.
of the word mother. Click on the one you think is correct. Good job! Here's a new question. Look at this sentence. One of the words in this sentence should be capitalized. Click on the word that should be capitalized. Not quite. Try again. Remember, Names of people must be capitalized. Click on.
So you see, in such a lesson, in such an assessment model, the learner is not just assessed uniformly. He is going to be assessed based on his previous performance on a previous task. So the computer is able to gauge the ability of this learner is at this level 1 or level 2 or level 3. This is the best way to do an assessment model for our learners, so that we can all bring about meaningful learning and quality education to our learners, other than treating all learners to be equal. You give them a summative exam at the end of the term. Everybody is being tested on the same thing. You are not taking care of the gifted learners, or maybe the time takers, for that matter. So let us all be able to emulate more adaptive forms of assessment. Of course, it is a form of assessment that has its own pros and cons. For advantages, it has increased measurement of accuracy, immediate scoring and feedback, you see. And then for disadvantages, it is the initial cost is very high, and security of information also is at risk, because it's something that can be done online and can be hacked. So creating digital quizzes for your classes. These are just examples of softwares that can be very useful for you to generate digital questions. Class Marker, Raptivity, EXE Learning, I've already looked at that, FlexiQuiz, and Profofs. These are some of the examples of softwares you can use online to generate quizzes, instead of you going down very quickly to generate quizzes. Then I also talked about mapping your assessment with the cognitive skill framework that we had looked at in Module 1. Let your assessment align itself to these 6 levels of cognitive skill. And that is the end of the recap for the modules that we looked at in our previous 3 weeks. Thank you so much. Maybe over to you, Kiko, if you have something.
Thank you so much, Teacher Maxwell, for that great presentation and for that great recap. Absolutely, it's an amazing one, and we hope you teachers have completely gained. Just because on the interest of time, so for my today was just to walk you through across what the platform does across all the lesson planning, content development, and assessment development. And just because of time, I definitely share videos that you can watch, and these will be tutorials on how you can walk across working from any level of the platform. So so last week I shared about how to develop the assessment. This week I'll send emails on across the 3 pillars on how you can use our platform to work on that, so that just we could just save time. But just because of the interest of time, I just prepared for those who are using some of the great feedback for those who are using mobile phones. So we could just quickly show these, because I know the mobile phone had an issue. So if you can all see my screen. Okay. So just super quickly. So this is the layout of the mobile phone. So immediately you go into the mobile, you sign in using the mobile phone. This is what you get. So you have this logo at this point, and then you have this button at this point, this green button here. Once you have that, then just click sign in, and then click home again. And then it will ask you to put your username. So we've all shared usernames. If you've not received your credentials, kindly let us know, and we'll definitely be able to share. And then here you can input your password, and then just click login. And here it gives you, like for example, in Teacher Maxwell, the first pillar we did the learning planning. So definitely you just click learning planning and scroll down. And as you scroll down, then you're able to query between the different subjects and classes, as I mentioned, like Form 2. And then you can select different subjects, like secondary IRA or even math. So secondary math, and then select the different topics that you need, and then select the subtopics. And from that point, then you're able to input your learning plan, and then create, once you do that, add skill, and then create the plan, and should be able to just quickly come down here for you to review. So I'll be able to send, and the same process appears to all the other items from uploading notes. So you just have to click once it's highlighted, then follow the same process, choose the subject, class, topic, and subtopic, and curate your notes. And similarly to the upload assignment. So I'll be able to send very great videos for both if you're using a mobile phone or if you're using your computer, because both have different interfaces, but they're all the same. It's only that how it appears on each device has a different orientation. So I'll be able to do videos on this, and then I can send you so that you're able to work on the assignments that will be given. So I'll send a comprehensive email on that case. So that was my presentation. So quickly, if we do have any questions, I would just you could just lift your hand and I'll be able to unmute you. So if you do have any questions, Vida too, if there are any questions that you think we can address super quickly in like 5 minutes or so, then we can tackle them.